things you see. I live and work in an area where students go to school and they pay per day. So there's so much gap that we see. And the COVID-19 pandemic brought its own problems and another dimension of creating gaps and widening the gulf. So what is technology doing? What can be done? And these are the things that we will be talking about today. And we're very pleased that we have in our midst those that are very, very qualified to talk about how we bridge this gap. So we welcome the Honorable Commissioner of Education in Lagos State, Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo, who will be talking to us about the role of government in bridging the learning gaps and its unifying plans. And she's in a very good position to talk about this, not only as a commissioner, but as someone who had also worked in the private sector of education, not just in Lagos State, but in other states. And so we welcome you, Ma, our Honorable Commissioner, as we talk about what the government is doing to bridge the gap. And we have the founder and CEO of U-Lesson Education. Again, technology is part of education that we're seeing now, that was not there 10 years ago, not even 5 years ago. And so U-Lesson has a unique position. So we welcome again the founder and CEO of U-Lesson, Mr. Sim Shagaya. You're welcome as you talk to us about bridging gaps through online learning. And online work, online virtual work, online learning is something that we're not going to run away from. And so he will talk to us about that, and we're very eager to hear how the gap in education can be bridged through these means. And the last but not the least, MTN Foundation has been in the forefront for providing, for supporting education in our country. So we'll be hearing from Odunayo Sonya as she talks to us, the Executive Secretary of MTN Foundation, as she speaks to us about supporting online learning to bridge the gap and the way forward. So these are very topical issues. And so this evening, we're very, very ready to listen, learn, and see how we're going to put these things into practice. It's how we're going to support one another as we try to bridge the gap, one step at a time, one child at a time, one school at a time, to bridge the gap in our education sector. So ladies and gentlemen, as I welcome our erudite speakers, I welcome everyone here. And I say thank you also to the influence group of Aisen for putting this together. So I welcome everyone. Thank you very much, and you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Oluwadamilola, for that welcome address. And my name is Abiola Lamikora, and I'm the moderator for this conversation, because it is a conversation, because we are going to continue to talk about these things. Now, for the speaker series, Aisen has always, from the last series, the last two speaker series events that we've held, we have always been talking about bridging the gap, because we are mindful of the fact that Aisen schools, by the very virtue of who they are already privileged. And we know that there's a wide gap between Aisen schools and other schools, but not just Aisen schools and other schools, but actually in our nation as a whole, there is a gap. And we know that we really want education to be for all and for every child, qualitative education, irrespective of the socio-economic level that they are born into. And for years, the education system has witnessed a gap between the different levels of society and opportunities available to them. And the key issue is actually equal access to these opportunities. And I think that is what we want to talk about today, that how are we going to make sure that the opportunities in education are accessible equally to each child? And just as we began to think that the gap was closing, just as we thought that things were beginning to move in the right direction, the COVID-19 pandemic took hit. And so that again has widened the gulf. So what the questions that we have been asking ourselves this afternoon are, what impact, did technology have on education during and after the pandemic? How did the various stakeholders seek to close the gap between the lockdown period or during the lockdown period? What steps can we take as educators and as members of the larger Nigerian society to bridge the gap? What are the unifying plans from the government to bridge the gap, and what is the way forward? Now, the fourth Sustainable Development Goal, as put forward by the UN, it says ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. That is the UN SDG report for 2021 states that COVID-19 has wiped out 20 years of education gain. The basic school infrastructure to build back better is lacking in most countries. And we know that sadly, Nigeria has to be, happens to be one of those countries. The 10th Sustainable Development Goal says reduce inequality within and among countries. The same report says that the pandemic is likely to reverse the progress made in reducing income inequality since the financial crisis. And so our speakers are going to be talking to us and telling us various things. And the first speaker of the day, with with respect to her and the fact that we really love the fact that she's in our midst, is no other than Folashade, the Honorable Commissioner for Education, Lagos State of Nigeria. Her main focus as the Commissioner of Education is to provide equitable education for all children in the state, irrespective of socioeconomic status, gender, or ability. And before her appointment as a commissioner under the governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu government in August 2019, she was the principal consultant CEO of Leading Learning Limited, an educational consultant firm that she had set up. She has over 40 years of work experience, and it spans various sectors: banking, organizational restructure, human resource management, international trade, and education. She was in the Corona Trust Council for 12 years, first as executive director and CEO, and then she actually managed the Corona Secondary School in Agara. She's deeply concerned about the learning crisis in the Nigerian education sector and has volunteered to work with the federal government and various state governments in transforming public education. So she's in an eminent position to actually speak as from her position as Commissioner of Education and also from her personal perspective as well. She's done so much. In line with her passion, she has also engaged in voluntary work with the Federal Nigeria Society for the Blind, volunteer corps, calls, Bridge International Academies, and various school boards. She's a merit winner of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and a university scholar of the University of Ibadan. She obtained distinctions both in her PGCE and MA education programs of the University of Nottingham. And so this afternoon, I'd like us all to welcome the Honorable Commissioner of Education for Lagos State, none other than Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo. Over to you.
Good evening. I don't know if you can see me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me here. And I'm glad to be part of this very interesting discussion. And I hope that I'll be able to contribute my little bit. Now, the gap exists, continues to grow, and I think we're all trying to look for strategies to reduce that gap. And you want to find out what government is doing. COVID was, I'm just coming from somewhere where I had to talk about the same topic more or less, and I'm just accessing my notes there. COVID was a tough time for us all. I know that the private schools felt, oh, we couldn't collect school fees, we couldn't open and so on. But by the time we opened in public schools, what we saw was really so terrible because so many children didn't come back. And these were due to poverty-related issues. And so many things happened to our students. They were in very, very difficult circumstances. We had a whole set of girls who were pregnant, and we had boys and girls who have been severely traumatized by what happened, because many of them, of course, live in families where if you don't work that day, you don't eat. So by shutting down the economy, all these people just could not eat anymore. They could not survive. They could barely survive. And so what to do about bridging that gap? About, first of all, getting them back to school with a certain mindset. But even during the lockdown, what to do to support them? Because government had not, in fact, invested sufficiently in IT. I would be the first to say that. And when the lockdown came and a lot of schools were saying, oh, don't worry, we'll go online, we'll do Zoom, we'll do this, we'll do that. We just knew we could do, we didn't have the means. There's no point in pretending. So the first step was, look, let's see how we can use the lowest form of technology. And that's when we teamed up with some organizations to introduce the lowest form of technology, which was radio and television. And so we worked with them to broadcast these lessons. But you know, there was an inherent problem. First of all, to our deep surprise, to my own deep surprise, I found that many of the children could not afford the 2,000 naira radio sets either. So we just had to go out and look for people to support us. And a lot of friends, I just called friends. I called my staff in the office. Look, all of you put down something. This thing is 2,000 naira. And so we were able to buy as many as possible and distribute them all over riverine areas and so on to children. But again, you know, the inherent problems with radio is that it's just a one-way communication traffic. The teacher teaches, you don't know if anybody's listening, you don't know if they're learning, you can't assess that learning has taken place. So we knew we had to move to the next level. So in moving to the next level, we had to call for people to support us, because the cost, you know, we have about 1 million children in school. So buying devices for 1 million children, I think you can understand the dynamics, the financial implications. And we found that most of the people who don't have radio, how would they have devices? And even when their parents had devices, these were never smartphones. So we just had to start using the lowest form of technology possible. And a lot of our teachers taught on Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, you know, because all these things were available even to the non-featured phones. But eventually we were able to work with a number of organizations who gave us featured phones on which we loaded our curriculum. And we also had 2 or 3 organizations that gave free access into their portal, so that we were able to load our curriculum and have our teachers online as well, who were able to teach various subjects. So at least a number of students had access at that time to devices. But you know, this is not a sustainable strategy. To rely on people to give you things and so on, it's just not a reliable strategy. You can work with them, they can at emergency, at periods of emergency, they can work with you, but it is not a strategy that you should rely on or hope will take you into the long run. So when COVID was over, it was now a situation of us sitting down and strategizing that what do we do? So there were 3 scenarios that we faced. First of all, the students who did not come back. We had to, especially our primary schools, they didn't come back. And that's where we have the lowest attrition, because most children, when we talk about our school in Lagos, most children do start primary school. In Lagos, we don't really have children we do have children who never went to school. But of the 10 million in Nigeria, it's not a significant proportion. And right now we are doing a house-to-house survey to find out children who've never been to school. So I'm sure in a few weeks, I'll be able to give you authentic figures of the number of children who've never been to school in Lagos State. So we knew that we had children who came to school for a bit and then dropped off, even though they're not paying school fees. But there were other attendant costs, like school uniforms, like notebooks, like pencils, you know, and shoes and uniforms. And so the poorest of the poor just cannot afford this. And while we've been working with assembly members, NGOs, and so on to donate, again, it's not a sustainable strategy. And so we had to set up Project Zero to bring children back to school. And this started people going into communities to ask, why are you not in school? And finding out it's mainly poverty-related issues. I don't have a notebook, I don't have this, I don't have that. And so we're able to get them, work with a lot of organizations and able to get them back to school. We've got about 5,000 back to school over a 2-month period. And we are still working on Project Zero. And part of Project Zero actually is the census that we're taking of out-of-school children. Now, the second step now, that was one scenario that we had to face. The second scenario that we had to face was the fact that we had a lot of attrition. And that caused a big gap, of course, because many of our children were leaving school. Let's say 10, let's say 100,000 start in GS1. We found that by SS3, we had just about 40,000 left. So that means that more than half of them dropped off along the line. The greatest the greatest attrition came from GSS3 to SS1 and SS2 to SS3. GSS3 to SS1, we had to find out now, why are they dropping off? So we had to had studies of various districts, and it was found out that it's again poverty related. Many of them just had to work. So they left school, and there are these people you see, petrol station attendants and so on. So how do we help such people? Some of them were now learning trades, carpentry, plumbing, auto mechanic, and so on. Again, that was distressing for us. So, and of course, there were those who were married, there were those who had started having children, and of course, the area boys and girls on the street. So clearly, the educational system we were offering, this one-size-fits-all approach, where we want everybody to do WAEC and then go on to university, it just wasn't working. It wasn't working, and we knew we had to do something about it. So what we decided to do, we had two separate scenarios that we planned. The first one is to face the quality of teaching and learning, because you cannot say teaching and learning is not part of the reason why there's a gap in learning outcomes between public schools and private schools. And at that time, we had about a 39% passing rate, which was really so bad, because that meant that 2/3 of the students who did WAEC in our schools were just not passing, which is just ridiculous. It cannot, even if you go and try and find out and do a measurement of IQ and so on, it's a normal curve. So if it's a normal curve, then most of the children should at least pass. So this was very distressing again for us. And we said, okay, so you don't just be distressed and look sad and you have to react. And so what would our reaction be? And that was when we decided that we would face teaching and learning with everything that we had. Training the teachers had been going on, but now it wasn't just training and training as usual. The teachers had to come back and escalate in school. So, I mean, I didn't plan to do a PowerPoint presentation, but I could have shown you a slide that I presented somewhere. I said, look, I called one of my PSCs. What happened? What did you do? There were more than 20 initiatives. Right from collecting data, showing people the data, because people didn't know that the students were failing at that level. Maybe you knew 10 students. I said, 10 of them failed. What a pity. So we collected data over many years, showed them the trend per district, per school, per local government area. I mean, I went around the whole state, talking to principals, showing them, calling them up. I'm sorry, naming and shaming. Top 10, thank you. Bottom 10, stand up for recognition as well. So that we know, so that people started seeing that they were going to be held responsible and accountable for the results of the students in their schools and not just walk away. So with all these, we started doing things like early morning drills, supporting students with the coaches, having coaches in school so that each teacher had a number of students that they were coaching and supporting and mentoring and helping through the teaching and learning processes, because these children had a lot of problems, home problems, poverty-related issues, you know, sexual abuse and harassment, and so on. So we had to support with that. We used old principals. They came back and started mentoring and coaching the existing principals, giving them strategies about how to support the students' learning. Of course, we trained teachers. We had to train them, give them new strategies for working for teaching students, because normally they just lecture. But now look, make it more engaging, use a lot more activities in the classroom, have a lot more strategies for engaging learners, assess learning in various ways. I mean, it went on and on. I can go on and on and on and on. But, and I'm tell you that actually here, when WAEC came out, we had a 79% pass. So going up from 39 to 79. Of course, the thing now is to maintain the momentum, because we have to sustain that momentum. That's the major challenge as far as I'm concerned. So we had to improve teaching and learning. And so with the remarkable increase in performance of the students, we now had to now say, okay, so there are some students who are not going to pass WAEC, because WAEC is a one-size-fits-all approach. You are going to university, you are going to read medicine. Remember that these are children from a different background that many of us are used to. Many of you on this platform anyway, they are very different from the children in your schools. I worked in Oshobo for a while, and Miss Lamkora worked there too. I had a student who had 6A1s in WAEC. She couldn't go to university. There was no money to buy jam form, to do the classes and so on. So we, her teachers, had to come to the rescue. But that was one child out of many. I went to the market one day and I had to illustrate this story in Oshobo, and we were buying yam. And the student gave us an extra yam. That is a place where people are very poor. So he said, why would you give us a whole tuber of yam? And the student said, oh, the principal who was with me was his chemistry teacher. And when we got into the car, the woman started crying. She said, I taught this boy in about SS2. He was a brilliant chap. He did very well, passed all his papers, made all his papers. But because of poverty, he's in the market selling yam. So we know there are many students who are not going to be able to go to university or whatever WAEC requires of you because of poverty. And so we had to have another track again. And we decided that we were going to turn all our schools into what we call comprehensive schools. And comprehensive schools, meaning that within the same school campus, since there's high attrition rates, by SS3, there are few students. So there's excess capacity. So in those excess rooms, let's turn them into comprehensive schools where we offer a range of vocational skills so that these students can learn these skills and still go to university if they want to, still do WAEC or do NAPTEP and go on to polytechnics and so on. But they will have a skill, a marketable skill with which they can make a living for themselves. So while in university, they can work and make money. Other children do it in other climes. So why not us in Nigeria? So we did that, and we just kicked that in on Monday. We have a pilot in 12 schools. We are doing, at present, the pilot includes 5 broad subject categories. These are Greek, for the obvious reasons, tech and digital skills, beauty and events. This is Lagos, we must make up. Most of us on the platform, I'm sure, are nicely made up. I saw Miss Lami Conrad, she was very well made up. So we'll have people making up and doing guillotine and fashion design. We have building and construction, media and entertainment. We're working with the private sector. And that's why I'm saying this deliberately. I haven't talked to Aisen, APEN, or any of you to support us. We actually, for our Greek, IITA is giving us their curriculum, and they're going to teach our teachers and teach students. For tech and digital skills, we are working with many tech companies. They're going to train the students. For beauty and events, we had the famous Tara give us a curriculum, not free, but at a seriously discounted rate. For building and construction, we are working with GIZ, German company and German group and so on. And media and entertainment, we've also gotten partners. And for all these, they are giving us their curriculum, they're training our teachers, and we're also working with the Finnish, 2 or 3 Finnish organizations. They are supporting with what we call the skills segments. Because apart from that, apart from these broad subject categories, we also insist that every student must do financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and stroke or employability, communication, marketing and sales, digital literacy, safety, hygiene, and environment. So that by the time they are done, we want to give them a really world-class experience. We are giving each child a tablet on which we've loaded the curriculum, where the Finnish company is working with us on basic financial literacy and so on, marketing and sales, digital literacy training. And we are working with junior achievement on entrepreneurship. We are also working with there's this co-creation hub on employability skills. So we have a lot of partners who are supporting us in this journey. And that's the other leg of it, so that we bridge that gap, so that a student who wants to take this on, even for entrepreneurship, we are working with Lagos State Employment Trust Fund that normally gives people starter kits. So let's say you are into photography, they give you a starter kit of a camera and all the little things you need to start off. So we are working with the LSCTF, and they are willing to give our students starter kits. We are also working with a lot of organizations for internships and so on. And so we think we are offering an optional career path. You can do it, you can follow the vocational pathway and follow it and let that be your pathway. Or you could follow it for a while, get certificated, come back and join us, because we said no door should close any other door. And that is our mantra, no door should close any door. So if you decide that, look, I've done this, I'm now very good at digital marketing and graphics design, let me go back and do school cert and go on to university, but I'll have a skill with which I can work. and make my way and pay my way in university. So it's not for the typical middle class or upper middle class and so on child who is going to go to university and whose parents cannot stomach or agree that you drop university. But it is for that child who would ordinarily not go because there are the parents don't have the means. So I think these are some of the ways that we try to bridge the gap. That is, if I can summarize, looking at younger children, our Project Zero, insisting that every child should come to school, having zero tolerance for children out of school, academic improvement plan, a deliberate and intentional plan. People have asked me, are you sure you did it? I don't think people pass school start because you hope they plan to, they pass it. They pass school start because you deliberately have strategies that will support their learning and the teaching of the subject. And so that's number two. And number three, of course, is the fact that we worked seriously on providing options for our students so that if they don't follow the academic routes, they can follow the vocational route. And in either case, make a good living, or in either case, come back again if that is what they want to do. So giving our students multiple, let me read it. We called it an education that provides credible multiple pathways to life success. And that's what we deliberately try to build in order to bridge the gap in Lagos State, because there's a tremendous gap. The challenge for us is sustainability. How do we sustain the schools? We are trying to get people to adopt a school, adopt their Greek department in a particular school, or beauty and events, and so support them with anything that they may need over the course of the years. Sustainability includes our relationship with British Council, with which we've signed an agreement, and so they keep on training our staff. They supported a lot with the 21st century skills, and this was all free on how to improve their teaching and learning in the classroom. We've looked at sustainability in terms of teachers. The teachers, we are not now fixated on having a beard or whatever. And I hope you know that in Lagos State, we do not have teachers that do not have the qualifications. So please, when they talk about unqualified teachers, we have nothing to do with that. We do have qualified teachers, but you know what is happening in our colleges of education. We are not fixated on them because they're highly didactic and they come to us and it's quite difficult to get them to change. So what we are doing is we are working with artisans. People who are, if I have a good plumber, we train him on how to become a good teacher. So we are also working with people who are helping us give them really superb training so that a good plumber, well-educated enough, can be a good teacher. A good hairdresser can be a good teacher. And these are the things that we are doing for sustainability, as well as passing all these things into law. So this is what we are doing to bridge the gap within public schools. And now that we've tested this, we're ready to go out to private schools, because maybe not your type of private school, but we do have private schools that also offer services to children in virtually the same demographic as children in public schools. And so we can support them with setting up these comprehensive schools. This is something that we really want to do. And apart from that, talking about relationship between private and public schools, we are setting up a department in the ministry that is going to be in charge of managing relationships with the private schools. I'm the first to admit that it went sour. It went sour over NSAS. I remember a lot of people, over COVID, thinking that I had the power to open a school. I didn't have the power to close or open any school during COVID. It was something that was way beyond my remit. It was a countrywide thing, and we just had to do what the country asked us to do. But thank God we found out that COVID is not that much of a killer, and we can allow schools to stay open. So we are setting up that department. They'll manage the relationships with the private schools, with PTAs, with parents. So with parents, with the school owners, with school organizations like APEN and Aisen, a whole desk, a whole department of managing that relationship. And I'm hoping that seen in our public schools. So the most engage us as them. So I'm so sorry. I think I went off, but I'm back and I think I've said what I need to say. I think I've said enough. Thank you very much for having me once again.
Thank you very much, ma. Ms. Lamikora, you need to unmute. You need to unmute.
Hi, Chinedim. I think Miss Lamin Kanra may have been disconnected as well.
I think so.
Yes.
I think so. Derek, would you take over to
Okay, I think,
moderate?
yeah, I think we can move on to the next speaker. Let me just check the program. Yeah, I think we can move on now to the next speaker. I think it is Mr. Sim Shagaya, who's the founder and CEO of uLesson, who I think is one of the leading technology lesson providers here in Nigeria. I think there are some questions. I think the Q&A is scheduled for after the speakers. So we'll hear from all the speakers because it may be that some of them are covered. And then, okay, Ms. Lamin Kanra is back. I think she's...
Is she? Is she back? I can't see her, but we would like to thank the Honorable Commissioner for giving us an insight into the great work that the Lagos State government, the Ministry of Education, under her leadership is doing in Lagos State. We are very grateful. Thank you for enlightening us. And we look forward to how Aisen would partner with the state government and maybe the federal government in bridging these gaps. All right, Derek.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's great. I think, yeah, there are a number of questions and I know that they're there. I think the schedule is that we'll hear from our three speakers and then we have scope for Q&A at the end. I believe our speakers will be able to stay around. I hope Honorable Adifasaya will be able to stay with us to the end. And then we can take those questions together. So if we can move on to Mr. Shagaya, the founder and CEO of...
Yes, hello.
Oh, Ms. Lamin Kanra, you are with us?
Yes, I'm back on, which is just the sign of the times. Our devices, they fail us.
It's
so
okay. We understand. We stood in the gap for you.
Thank you very much. So I'm just let me you know, when you have everything all planned and, you know, everything is, or you've gotten your ducks lined up in a row. So I'm now making sure that I want to get Mr. Shagaya's profile, so that because we would like to let our speakers, our guests know that we have a highly competent person to talk about the next topic. And so I would like to introduce, I would like to introduce Mr. Sim Shagaya, and he's a renowned Nigerian entrepreneur and inventor. He's popularly known as founder of the West African largest e-commerce websites, Konga. He's the founder and CEO of ULesson Education, the region's fastest growing educational technology platform. He studied in the Nigerian Military School, and he then moved on to the United States, got a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from the George Washington University, and a Master's of Science at Dartmouth College. He also holds an MBA certificate from Harvard Business School. In the early days, he worked with South African Rand Merchant Bank, from where he moved on to become Google's head for Africa. In 2005, he founded eMotion, a Lagos-based out-of-home advertising brand. Then he went on to found Deal Day in 2011, and then Konga in 2013. And Konga became one of the biggest e-commercial businesses in West Africa. He then founded ULesson in 2019, and in the same year, he raised $3.2 million seed $3.2 million seed round led by TL Capital. The ULesson app, which was officially launched into Africa market in March 2020, is a learning platform targeting secondary school students in Africa, Europe, and North America. You will agree with me that that was a timely launch, March 2020. With a head office in Abuja, ULesson is an education technology business whose mission it is to deliver high quality, affordable, and accessible education to all Africans. The app hosts thousands of education video lessons delivered by subject experts with digital animation and illustrations explaining key concepts. As a result of remarkable entrepreneurial achievements, Sim Shagaya has received a few awards and accolades over the years. In 2013, Sim was named the Entrepreneur of the Year at the CNB All Africa Business Leaders Award in West Africa. In 2014, he was named Leadership CAO at the Leadership Conference. He was also listed among the 10 most powerful men in Africa by Forbes in 2014. He's passionate about effective learning and recently raised a series funding round of $7.5 million. So this financial support will be implemented to deliver exceptional services to more age segments across various countries. And so over to you, Mr. Shagaya, as you tell us your journey so far and what you are doing in the educational sector. Thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, that very kind introduction. And I have to thank the association for having me here. It's the first time I'm meeting with you. I certainly hope it won't be the last time. Well done for all of the work you're doing, and I feel incredibly privileged to be amongst you. I really enjoyed listening to the Honorable Commissioner and all of the hard work they're doing at Lagos State, which in many ways is a pace setter in our country for education. I'm really pleased to be here with all of you. Education has played a big role in my life. It's something I've always been deeply passionate about. Even before I founded Konga, I had two choices before me. It was either to do something in the field of education, basically exactly what I'm doing now, and that was back in 2008, or to do e-commerce. And back then, the enabling conditions to do what we're doing now were just not in place. There's a lot that has changed between 2008 and now. We take it for granted just how much this country has moved forward in terms of the digital context and the digital background. Some of these things seem like numbers, but if you just think of how much our society has shifted in the span of these 14 years, back then, smartphones were really owned by the very privileged few. Today, Nigeria, I think, has some of the deepest smartphone penetrations on the continent. It's well over 45% now. Just a few weeks ago, the NCC announced the licensing of 5G operators. And I have to say, incidentally, this is 5G is going to mark such a profound shift in the operations of all of your schools and what you do, and even in your lives in the background. It's almost the equivalent of going from 2G, what we popularly call not 9 not, to from 1G, what we call not 9 not, to 2G when GSM was released. It's that massive a step change. So that's happening. Again, Nigeria is leading the charge with that. Payments are in place. People are getting used to doing things at a distance. Look at us here meeting at a conference at a distance. 10 years ago, if you had told anybody on this panel that you were organizing a conference and would all meet on a browser or on a Zoom application, many of us would have just laughed at that. Even the most visionary of us would not have taken that seriously. But yeah, here we are. People often ask me, how do you figure out what to do? How do you go into these spaces and disrupt these spaces, whether it's commerce or education? And, one of the things I try to do in figuring out whether a field is compellingly large enough and, from a commercial point of view, and I don't think we should apologize for that. I don't think there's anything mutually exclusive between sort of the commercial thrust of the Nigerian entrepreneur, of which many of you are, and fulfilling the educational requirements of society. So, when I try and figure out what makes sense to pursue, it always helps, at least my teachers and the people I've learned from have always said it's best to look to history. History will often tell you where the world is coming from. And by doing that, you have sort of a data point in the past, you have your data point in the present, and then you can, to some remarkable degree of accuracy, project where the world is going. But one of the biggest things that I think history can teach us today as educators is that things were not always like this. And if you go back and you look at how different the world was a century or two ago, then you'll be more comfortable accepting some of the changes that you lesson, and some of you even, because I think I see some of our customers here, that we're putting in place to prepare us for the future. So, where was the world coming from? It's interesting today, we all woke up to this news of this Ukraine, this Russian invasion of Ukraine. The last time the world went through a massive educational shift was just at the eve or just on the eve of World War II. Before that, the educational system was very different, depending on the part of the world you were, India, China, the United States, very, very different. But the system that we use today, that we find to be most popular around the world, certainly in Nigeria, started around that time, that eve of World War II. And on the at the end of the last pandemic, the Spanish flu of 1918. Before that time, parents in the United States, for instance, were largely responsible for educating children. Education was very, very different. It was driven by parents. Of course, you had a few public schools. There were a few instances of sort of the city of Boston and a few places here and there that were funding public schools and using public resources to create schools. But by and large, education was, and then the UK had a deeper history of public schools. But by and large, for the vast majority of people, education was driven by parents, it was distributed, and even where there was collective effort, it was very grounded in religion, so it was taking place in churches and mosques. But around that time, as printed books became more popular, and printed books are a technology, they've disappeared to the background of our mind. We don't think of it as technology, but it is media technology. Books are media, they are media technology. So books had really sort of become more popular, and then governments, for a whole host of reasons we can spend a whole day talking about, decided to become more interventionist in schools. And then this cohort-based way of learning emerged, where you put kids in classes, and then they took an exam. And in many instances, in many states in the United States, whether the kids passed the exam or not, the entire cohort got promoted to the next class. That's where we started to see this sort of stratification of classes and then kids getting promoted from one class to the other. But before that, that never existed. It was not the case at all. It wasn't there. We've carried this system on for 100 years now, and different countries have applied it with great success. The ones that have been most successful at applying this model have taken the model, but then adapted it to their reality. And one country that stands out to me is China. China took this model, this industrial era model that was born in the West, and then aggressively built up primary and secondary schools, I think starting in the 1950s by the Communist Party. Massive build out of primary and secondary schools with the strict aim of eliminating illiteracy and infusing practical skills into young people that would drive productivity and drive the economic growth of China. So the mission was very much driven by what the state needs. And evidently, we can see the seeds that were planted in the 50s have blossomed beautifully in that country. Anybody that's been to China, no matter whether you agree with their politics or not, you have to respect how far they've come in terms of human development indices. We took those systems, but we did not adapt them so much, I think, as successfully to our own needs. It happened for us through the lenses of our relationship with, our colonial masters and the needs for maintaining those relationships, and then ultimately for independence. And then post-independence, there were all kinds of agendas that suppressed, some parts of our curriculum or some other parts of our curriculum. And we certainly didn't do as good a job of pushing the public school agenda. Again, this is, you have to hold out certain states, I think most notably Lagos, because even within Nigeria, you feel like there are different countries. So Lagos is far ahead. As you sort of move out, the Southwest far ahead, Southeast far ahead, and you start to come up towards the North, then we didn't do so much of a good job. But in all of this, the private sector stepped in. And I think this is where, folks on this panel really have to give themselves some credit, because our part of the world is where private education as a percentage of total enrollment is growing the fastest in the world. And that makes me very excited, because private educators are generally much more willing to experiment with technology. So, what is all of this saying? We are now at a point where if you look at all of this and you say, things were not always this way, the question now is, where are we going? How has media technology changed? It has changed dramatically. The paper and the book is going to be around with us for a very long time. When new technologies like the tablet and browsers and computers and things like that disrupt, when new class of media technology come and disrupt an old class of media technology, it doesn't mean the old media technology goes away. The old class continues to echo, sometimes for a century. So it's not that books are going away, but I think what you're going to see is that this stack of tablets or computers and then browsers or applications that sit on top of that, this stack is going to play a deeper and deeper role in the way we operate the educational system, whether that is public schools or private schools. It's going to apply to everybody. I often hear people make the argument that, oh, but the poor cannot afford these technologies. Whether the technologies are referring to the hardware, the tablets and the smartphones and the laptops, or the connectivity. But again, if you study history, it is replete with examples of technology becoming increasingly cheaper and increasingly adopted by lower income people. So this is bound to happen. It's just a matter of time. And I think that those of us that are going to grab these technologies first and apply them first will find out that we will prepare our kids much quicker, much more efficiently, with much greater outcomes for their future than those of us that are later to the game. So, if there's something that we will learn, I think it is that we have to think about our educational system through the context of our own realities. This is the first thing. I think it's a responsibility of not just the public sector or the private sector, but we have to make these investments in education. And I think we need to make these investments through the lenses of the new technologies that are available. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a stakeholder in the new technologies. It would be easy to go and invest in a publishing house that prints, books. But I genuinely believe that these new technologies are not only more effective, and they're effective on several dimensions. They're effective in terms of creating a more personalized experience for the child. And I think it's becoming trite now. There are fewer and fewer people that would argue with the fact that more customized, personalized experiences create better outcomes. So the new technologies outstrip the old ones by far in that respect. They are more efficient in taking limited teacher resources and then stretching those resources and making them available to a wider base of students, whether the context of that base is within a school or within a state or within a country, which is one of the things we're doing at ULesson. We find some of the best teachers we can find, some of the most brilliant minds we can find, and we create these pre-recorded lessons and we make them available to a wide group of students. That's not all our app does, by the way. There are several functions that it does. I'll try and touch on those also. But these media technologies are also more efficient in increasing the productivity or the productivity within the operations of a school. So it's not just the back office functions of human resources and teacher management, but also the communication with the parents, sending report cards to the parents, sending analytics to the parents, allowing the parents intuitive ways to see how their kids are performing. And if you go even several levels deeper, allowing the school operators to know which parents are opening the report cards. Right now, you ship an envelope to a parent and there may be that odd parent, and let's be honest, they do exist, that may not look at the report card. But in this case, you will know who opened it. You will know who opened it twice. You will know who opened it 3 times. So, this sort of data means that we are in a world of technology that is so much better than the old way of doing things. And so this is what ULesson is building. We are looking to build tools. First and foremost on our mind is to build systems that help the learner achieve mastery and achieve their goals. And I think in order to do that also, we have learned that we have to support schools. We have to work alongside schools. I don't think schools will ever be supplanted, first of all. I don't think that's going to be, that disruption is coming for a whole host of reasons we can talk about. But that's what we believe, at least. We believe that our work is to collaborate in optimizing the outcome of students and working with the institutions that are also optimizing the outcomes for those students through supporting, curriculum and academics and distribution, whether that distribution is within a class or, straight to home in a tutoring context, in a supplemental context, optimizing the operations of a school. We're really excited. We're building some pretty revolutionary things right now that will help within schools. Wish I could talk about them, but I'll wait maybe a quarter or two. That would really kind of change the game in terms of the efficiency of the operations of a school. And then I think, initially the first question before the introduction was, what are these gaps? I think if we look at it through that question of what are the gaps, I do think that there are gaps in sort of how much you can get a bigger return on investment from adapting technology within your operations, within rethinking curriculum. But I think also from that curricular point of view, if you look at it, there are gaps that don't really sort of fit our context. And it is up to us, where the federal hasn't been fast enough, then let the states move fast. And if that's not the case, then let the private proprietors, move fast. But one big gap that we're obviously filling is there's massive demand across the world right now for computer engineers. Massive demand for programmers, developers, whatever term you choose to assign. And then the ancillary jobs around that, product designers, the digital marketers. You look for these people, you literally cannot find them. I would think that this would be a massive target of investment on all levels, on the private and the public side. This is a big gap on the curricular level. There is commercial market demand on the other side. And it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get more acute as we go through the years. You're just not going to be able to find these people. And here's the interesting thing. Nigerian kids, these kids, I've worked with, kids from Nigeria, Estonia, South Africa, the United States. What the young people of this country are doing from a technology point of view, whether it's the fidelity of their code, the integrity of their code, the code that they write, the quality of the engineering, it is world-class. And in many cases, it even surpasses, even on the product design side. But those are for the few kids that get that opportunity. So, ideally, you want to see, this gap kind of bridged on the curriculum level. I think we have a responsibility to do that. We have a product, if I can plug that addresses that in a very direct way, and makes that available to schools. We have, many customers to schools where we provide the coding instructors that then can go in and teach kids real coding, real syntax. So that's how we're looking at the world. It's a very specific, targeted approach that is based on the fact that the world is changing. We cannot be, none of us must be the sorts of people that say, because this is the way things have been done for the past 100 years, this is the way it's going to be done for the next 100 years. It's just not the way the world works. Things change very, very quickly. Instead, we must be able to reach into the future, and we have to be able to, create that future and do it understanding the power of these technologies, not relying too much on the legacy of our experiences, willing to try out small experiences, not in a way that challenges our legitimacy or credibility as educators or makes the parents say, what are you doing? But we have to be able to try these experiments. I think tablets and tablets with parental controls and all the necessary sort of requisites are a must-have for a kid today, especially for the private schools and the higher end ones that can afford it. It's just a must-have. I don't think it's sort of a negotiable. It's a valuable learning tool. We have to be able to think about curriculum different. And if not for anything, when we look at the expense lines of our school, we have to think about how do we, basically get rid of those expenses that are not needed by grabbing sort of the best-in-class technology to improve our efficiency, again, whether that's HR or finance or, attendance taking and some of these things that the old media technology of paper just do not cater for. So I'm going to stop there. Again, I have to say I'm really thankful. I think, in some ways, you guys are the custodians of the dreams of the future. We all are. Nobody really can. The education industry is the one industry that we all, as human beings, say we've participated in some form or the other, either as providers or customers, or we aspire to be. So, but that industry, I think, is the basis, has created the basis for, my curiosity around the world, my colleagues' curiosity around the world, the way we think about, building new things for our market. That's all because of education. We seem like new entrants. We don't want to seem arrogant or like we know everything. That's why we talk to schools so much. ULesson is just approaching 3 years old now. The impact has been huge already. So we want to learn so much more from everybody. And, with that in mind, thank you so much for welcoming me so warmly and so quickly into your midst. And I'm sure, we'll continue to collaborate and work together to just bring the future closer just a bit quicker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shigaya. That's quite an interesting perspective that you have put to it. The truth about it is that we have to move with the times, and the times are changing very rapidly. We cannot say that we are not going to engage with technology. It has come to stay, and it's changing the face of the world rapidly. The things that one was used to in 2015 they now seem obsolete, and so the world moves on. So thank you very much, and I'm sure that as there will be questions that will be asked, but we can see that whether we are ready or not, technology has come to stay. But there was one thing that I've taken away. You said that the costs will begin to diminish as they become much more available for everybody. So thank you very much for that. Now we will go over to Ms. Odwa Yosoya from MTN, and she's the executive secretary there. Again, she too has an impressive CV. She has a multi-sectoral work experience spanning the education, financial services, telecommunication, and development sectors. She currently serves as the executive secretary of MTN Foundation, where she drives the alignment between strategy, which is very important, between strategy, the SDGs, and the national priorities. An alumni of the Lagos Business School and Institute of Managed Development, Switzerland, with executive training from the Harvard Business School and Cornell University. She's a John Maxwell certified coach, a speaker and trainer, a certified DISC trainer. She's also certified in change management. She's an author, and her book, Alphabets of Leadership for Young Minds, is listed in the United States Library of Congress. So over to you, Odwa, as you tell us about what MTN is doing to actually now begin to help, in the various sectors of education in Nigeria, because we know that they have been involved in quite a bit. So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to say thank you to the Aisen community for welcoming MTN into your midst this evening. I'd like to say thank you to the Honorable Commissioner and to SIM for the great job, being done. I think I'll take off from where Mr. Shagaya stopped, and that's when he talks about the fact that we can't escape technology. The truth is, as a nation, we are, and we know that we're playing a catch-up game. And one thing that can help us close the gap, quickly is technology. It will leapfrog us. It's scalable. Technology is that thing that helps you be in multiple places at the same time. And so I think, it's about opening up our minds, more to technology. And like has been said, a few years ago, we're talking about the future of work, the future of everything. But unbeknownst to us, the pandemic was right about to usher us into that future. And here we are. Well, it seems things are getting, a bit back to normal. However, you find that it's not going to be normal anymore. The normal we've always known. It's a new normal where life happens virtually, learning happens virtually. I wrote an article sometime in 2020, and I said, the schools need to have a sign, because schools were shut. And I said, schools need to have a sign there that says, we moved. And by the time someone asks to where, and the response is, we moved online, So I think it's important to understand that, yes, technology is just here to stay, and it's a key, to development. As has been said, do we have gaps? That was the first question. Of course, there are gaps. There are gaps in terms of accessibility, and that's where we talk about the devices. A lot of these devices are quite... The pricing can be humbling for the bulk of the population. As at the last time I checked, an MBS report of 2019 says about 40% of Nigerians live, this is the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigerian, live below poverty, below the poverty line. And at that point, 40%, about 83 million people. And I'm not sure we're closing that, the gap is reducing yet. And of course, this ties into the UNICEF report that said about that. I think the Honorable Commissioner alluded to that when she said about UNICEF says about 10.5 million children are out of school in Nigeria. And I think it's linked, the poverty levels and what we see in terms of students not being able to go to school. So really, when we talk about bridging the gap, we're talking about how do we close, a that gap of accessibility in form of, the dearth of devices that we see. There are issues around connectivity. Can people afford to subscribe? And I think Mr. Shagaya alluded to this when he said, over time, it will be, when something becomes really ubiquitous, it becomes more affordable, but that is over time. But we have an urgent gap to close. Another gap that is being closed by, entrepreneurs like Mr. Shagaya and his, friends, his fellow entrepreneurs, is the gap of content. Initially, there was a gap, but we're closing that now. And I believe through ULesson and many other ed techs that we have around, we will the gap will be closed. Now, the last gap for me that I see is the gap of guidance in terms of teacher training. A lot of children, I'm sure all the private, Aisen is made up of private schools, and we can afford it. We can afford the devices, we can afford connectivity, we can afford the content, and the teachers are trained. But when you come, and the Honorable Commissioner was alluding to that, she's alluded to that when we come to the public schools, it's a different ballgame entirely. Some of these teachers, need to be trained and retrained because, like has been said, we adopted a mode, we adopted the Western education without really adapting it, which is what sets places like China apart. So how do we not then begin to train our teachers in what I call a homegrown curriculum that enables us, that understands we've catered for a particular situation, we've catered for a reality as Nigeria, and we know that that is the curriculum that delivers rather than just adopting, an imported curriculum. I could, go on and on, but I'll just go and talk a bit about, how MTN and the MTN Foundation is closing the gap. Is contributing to closing the gap because it's a huge gap and we might not be able to, just close it alone. It's about public-private sector partnership. The MTN Foundation was founded in 2004, and it came about as from MTN's dedicated commitment to set aside up to 1% of its profit after tax to, set it aside to enable the communities that we operate in. And there's a belief that we have in MTN. I call it a statement of faith in MTN. And what it is that we believe that everyone deserves the benefits of a modern connected life. Now, when we talk about, the connectivity is beyond you just buying airtime, you just subscribing to our products and services. No, it's about the fact that everything that we offer is a gateway to possibilities for people. It helps individuals and corporates, collectives connect to their dreams. Right now, at the foundation, we were solely funded by, MTN Nigeria, and of course, everything we do is aligned towards ensuring that we meet the SDGs and we meet the national priorities that have been set for Nigeria. So yes, we do. We focus on education, and for us, it's about youth development. We don't need to explain why we need to focus on youth development. We're a young nation in terms of demography, in terms of age. Africa is the youngest continent on earth, today. And so you find that the ability, we have, boundless energy with the young people, but how do we channel this energy? How do we help them such that we begin to create the future we desire and they're part of that future, and then they can thrive in that future. So at different points in time, MTN through the foundation, we focused on creating infrastructure, because when we talk about connectivity, devices, for us at MTN, we know that MTN is not we're not a device, we're not an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer. We don't manufacture devices. However, we believe that we have a role to play. And we've started transitioning from a technology, from a telecommunications company to a tech co, a technology company that uses technology to advance human existence. So that's what we're championing in MTN. At the MTN Foundation, at different points in time, we've supported schools. We really focus on public schools, so it's possible that some members of Aisen, yeah, I think that's the pronunciation, may say that they haven't felt the foundation, but we believe the gap is in the public space. And I think, the commissioner today has confirmed that, and we have, various data sets that point to this. So for us, we believe that it's important to equip young Nigerians from secondary schools into universities. And so what we do is that we seed to the schools ICT labs. We set up ICT skills centers in the schools, equipping it with these devices, knowing fully well that it's difficult to afford. A lot of these children can't afford the devices. So MTN Foundation steps in, we do up the lab, give them some form of connectivity. And we, also on the systems, load content. So we work with our ecosystem partners like Google, Microsoft, and we get content and we load it. Now, we've done that for close to about 60 schools under the Schools Connect. And I'm still coming to some of the challenges that we face. Currently we have a program we call the What Can We Do Together program. We believe that is important. MTN is Nigerian and we are, what we are because of Nigerians. And so a few years ago, we came up with a concept called What Can We Do Together, where we encourage Nigerians, we have a theme, and we encourage Nigerians to nominate schools and communities for them to benefit either from, sanitation in form of water or the schools in form of ICT labs. We've done quite a number of things. And so for last year, we got nominations because even with the pandemic, we didn't stop. We got nominations and we took about 39 schools. So we have about 39 schools. We're rounding up the schools. What did we do? It's also about the ICT and digital skills training. Digital skills lab. So we're equipping each school with about 25 to 30 laptops with alternative power. We're conscious of the environment, want to preserve the environment, alternative power and content on these laptops such that the students can learn. So those are some of the ways that the foundation tries to bridge the gap. We don't want to mind the gap, want to bridge, want to be an active participant in bridging the gap. So these are some of the things we've done. I heard and we continue to do, when the Honorable Commissioner talked about, children not being able to afford even, pens, pencils, writing materials to school bags. The foundation has done this over and over again, where we go to very indigent communities and we equip the children there, to go to school. In terms of MTN, we continue to support during the lockdown and even into the whole of last year. We recognized that it was important to make content available for young people, generally for them to learn. And so we have a platform in MTN we call the MTN Pulse. It's actually a product of MTN, but you can check mtnonline.com/MTN Pulse. It's for children between the ages of 9 to 15. And what we do is that we partnered with techs to give us content. And so they can access the content. There's a free level, so you can access the content free. We have past questions for WAEC on the platform. They can practice and do a lot. Now, when they subscribe to the MTN Pulse tariff plan, you get, MTN matches the volume of your data usage. So for instance, if you're using 500 MB, MTN matches it with another 500 MB, and you can, continue to have access to the content, because we believe it's important. And so if you use 1 gig, we match it, we give you, 2 gig. But the interesting thing throughout last year is that we did give on a monthly basis 15 gig to those who sign up for this tariff plan, 15 gig every month up until December last year. And the reason why we kind of stopped December last year is because we are regrouping, we're reworking the approach. And the approach going forward, I think, Sim spoke to the fact that, the 5G licenses, and MTN happens to be one of the 2 who currently have the 5G licenses. And we recognize that education and health will benefit greatly from 5G. So we're looking forward to, the use case for education using 5G to accelerate, education in Nigeria. This is some, I think my time is, I just got a prompt that my time is almost up. Now, in terms of the challenges we faced challenges where, sustainability challenges. So you've done all of this, you've handed it over to the school. At times you find that there's no ICT teacher, and you're told at the last minute, and so some of those labs are locked up. But going forward, part of the part of what we now included as our selection criteria is that you must have competences in terms of ICT teaching skills within the school. So those are some of the challenges that we have faced. The challenge of keeping those labs running, rather than, so we have instances where sometimes there's a problem with maybe after years, because this things come with some about 2 years warranty. And so after years of using it, and maybe the laptops, the desktops are breaking down, the schools don't think it's part of their responsibility to fix some of these issues. The private sector is not going to be able to do everything. We will partner and do this, but those are some of the challenges that we face really in terms of that we have faced in rolling out some of these initiatives. And I think as a way going forward, when we talk about the way forward, I think corporate CSR will go a long way. But corporate CSR that also matches sustainability, that has sustainability at the core, because you can't keep giving. At some point, what you give has to take on a life of its own. And I think that's where I come to the way forward in terms of the curriculum. I think that our curriculum needs to be really, really reviewed. Quite interesting when the Honorable Commissioner spoke to the comprehensive schools, the vocational schools, and the technical schools. It's quite interesting to see that this is, coming back gradually. But the core curriculum that we teach, it's important that we localize it. It's important that we make it fit for purpose, which is what the Asian tigers have done, China, Japan, and they're better for this. So I think it's important for us to relook our curriculum and relook the way that we learn. COVID took learning out of the classroom. Yes, the children are back. I'm a mother to 3, young ladies, and they're back in school, still trying to learn. But at this stage, to close the gap, we might find that we need to take learning out of formal schools and put them in clusters of communities where people can jointly have access, to content and to devices and to connectivity. And I think if we do a few of these things, public-private sector partnership is key, because that will help us, further bridge the gap. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Odunayo. When we start these conversations, we find
Chinedum, we appear to have lost Miss Lamin Kanra again. Unfortunately, I'm sure she will come back to us. But thank you very much for Miss Odunayo Sanya for talking to us there, and also about your lesson. I believe that there is now a poll available around some of the topics that we've been discussing. So I'd encourage if everyone can take part in the poll. And if you have questions for our speakers are still with us. I would encourage if you can type them into the chat box. That would be very welcome. And then the speakers will be able to make their comments. If they're specific or more general, please just add your questions into the chat box and then we can address those. The aim is to be interactive. I think Ms. Lamin Kanra will be back with us any moment. Having talked about the challenges of connectivity, I think that was most appropriate. Ms. Lamin Kanra, were you just giving us a demonstration?
Yes, and there is a competition of connectivity between Agbara, Ibadan, and the Ijebu. Yeah.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Well, thank you very much. And I'm hopping between networks, and it's well, we've got there are some questions that who should take the lead in bridging the gap in education in Nigeria. And as we can see, everybody is saying that it's the responsibility. Well, surprisingly, are we all done? Okay, 100% answered. The federal government, okay, educators, educators take the lead at 45%, federal government at 43%, state government 8%. Okay, is the federal government increasing? No, it keeps on the educators. But it's obvious that there has to be a collaboration between government and educators, which is why the conversation of the Honorable Commissioner was so impressive, because truly Lagos State has been doing a fantastic job, concerning the bridging the gap. But the one thing that struck me from the Honorable Commissioner's talk was the fact that poverty is plays a key role in all of this. But I must give kudos to Lagos government. I like the fact that you are tracking, the children and looking at them and really putting in interventions and making sure that they are going to be sustainable. And so, we don't have so many questions, not so many questions as comments, We'd say thank you and well done, Madam Honorable. The comprehensive high school is not new. However, plans appear good on paper, but usually very difficult to feel the effect of these methods and approaches, especially with the public schools. The person asks that, why is this? And also that the differences between the comprehensive schools and technical schools are not much. So, Honorable Commissioner,
a question about how sustainable are these comprehensive schools going to be? What are you putting in place to make sure that they remain sustainable? Thank you very much. Honorable Commissioner, are you still with us? Is she still with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Did you ask me a question?
Yes, we were talking about the fact that the Lagos state government is doing a laudable, and the Ministry of Education, you are doing a laudable thing, you know, in making sure that you are, because you are actually looking out to bridge the gap. You know, you are making a conscious effort to bridge the gap, and so we applaud you. But the question was about the comprehensive colleges, that how sustainable are they going to be?
Well,
what plans are you putting in place to make sure that they remain sustainable?
Well, first of all, there must be a law backing them. So we started working with the Ministry of Justice. All we have now is a pilot. So it's not how the thing is going to be at the end, I imagine. So we have a pilot on now, and we're working with the Ministry of Justice to make it sustainable. But law, it can still fail. You know that. A new person can still come and not implement it. I think what we have to do to ensure that it doesn't die is for the public to buy into it and believe in it. So that's why in starting it off, we actually went to communities. So we talked to Obas, because the Obas themselves said, there are all these boys walking on the streets, no job, no skills, nothing, no training. Help us get them off the streets. So we talked to Obas, community leaders, NGOs in the community, and so on. And that was good. So if we are able to get the community to believe in this and buy into it, it will be pretty difficult for anybody to come in and say, I'm stopping this. But all we can do is make sure we start it, make sure it has a good head start. But I can't say anybody after me has to do this. I just have to ensure that it is so well done that it will be difficult for anybody to stop it. That much I can say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And that is true, you know, for these things to work, we really have to go to the grassroots and get the consensus and the support of the end users themselves. So thank you very much. Okay, there's a question here. All right, and this is Dr. Bani Wilson, and you're asking that so this is to Odunayo, what can MTN do to help teachers with data large scale? It's still a struggle.
Can you take that again, please?
Odunayo.
Yeah. You said, what can teachers do? I'm trying to look through. What can MTN do?
Are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
It says, what can MTN do to help teachers with what can MTN do to help teachers with large scale? Hello?
Okay, so I didn't hear you, but now I've read the... can you hear me? Can anyone hear me, please? Am I audible? Wow.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Yes, I can hear you. I think
okay, so
yes. Please answer, yes.
Okay, good. So I've read it. I didn't hear her, Mrs. Lamikaran, but I have read it. What can MTN do to help teachers with data large scale? It's still a struggle. Well, without making any commitment, we continue to look at, to optimize the pricing of data. However, I'm sure that, getting together, we can maybe create some form of maybe a tariff plan for teachers. This is something I'll take back in, and then, we would look at it. So I'll take this back from here. Maybe creating a tariff plan for teachers, maybe, but that I'll take back.
Okay, thank you. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Odrayo, because actually this second poll that we've just done actually will give you an answer. Will tell you what everybody's expecting from networks, because we said the question was online learning comes at a cost. What can be done to reduce the cost? And options, negotiated rates with network providers, government subsidy, and total cost covered by government free education package. And those that have responded have, it's a clear thing that everybody wants, negotiated rates with network providers. So I think you would need to look at that. So Odrayo, please go ahead. You have your hand raised.
Okay, yes. So I just wanted to say that, well, what we've done, just to share.
You have your hand raised.
Yes, I'm speaking. You can't hear me. I don't think you can hear me. Can anyone hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Super. Okay, thank you. So I was just going to say that in the past, so I'll just share an example to tell you how we've done this. How we've done this, in the past, is that we have worked with certain schools at state government level, where we give both teachers and students access to certain sites, that content sites that are very important for their studies and for the teachers to guide the students. So we give them access to this site. Some of them are 0 rated and some of them are at reduced rates. So we did this during the pandemic, but it's something that, yes, we would look at again. Thank you.
Okay, I think Ms. Lamin-Kanra is again struggling with networks, but thank you very much, Odrayo, for responding to that. And perhaps that's something, I don't know if you've worked previously with Mr. Shagaya with ULesson, because that seems like that may be an interesting opportunity for collaboration. I know that many of the schools would be very interested in that.
Yeah, so Mr. Shagaya knows MTN very well. I'll leave it at that. Let me leave it at that.
Excellent. Well, on behalf of Aisen and the international schools, and I'm sure on behalf of the Honourable Commissioner, we look forward to a good connection there that can work very well for schools across the country, and that'd be great. Okay, so there's another poll running at the moment. Ms. Lamin-Kanra, you are back with us? Are you back with us?
Yes, I am. And can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly now. That's excellent.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that just before I exited, what I was, it says that I'm talking about can the Ministry of Education also bring in these interventions to the private schools? I don't think I have that question again. So it's okay, yes. Can the ministry carry the private schools along in this initiative through orientation? Honorable Commissioner?
Well, we'll be glad to. Like I said, when it comes to the comprehensive schools, what we are doing is still a pilot. Once we are sure of the model and that it works, we certainly want to talk to everybody. I talked to 1 or 2 people today and yesterday in the private school associations, and I said, I'm willing to come to them. I mean, if they're having some event or the other, to just talk for like 30 minutes or so, take them through in case you have schools that are interested. So yeah, this is not something for public schools or children in the state. So I'm quite fine and open to more partnership support, not just support, but also how they too can run such schools in their schools if they are interested.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, the third poll asked what can be done to bridge the gap in education in Nigeria. And we can see from the results that actually we are all, review the curriculum should be one thing, increase the allocation of funding for education in the annual budget, because all of these, it's like 25%. Nobody voted for increasing the number of schools. We talked make teacher training top priority at all levels of education, 26%, and then improve access to online resources for all Nigerian children. So all of these are the things that we have highlighted, but nobody is talking about an increase in schools, because what we are saying is that the present schools should be strengthened first. And once we are able to work with the present schools and get them stronger, then things will begin to improve, and the gap will definitely be closed up. And so at this point, if we don't have any more questions, and I think that we've had quite an interesting afternoon today, which is good. We want to ask our speakers, for just 1 minute, just give a summary, at the end, just a summary of what you would want us to take and go away with concerning bridging the gap. So, Honorable Commissioner, over to you.
You want me to summarize the...
Just in 1 minute, what would be the takeaways?
Well, for me, the greatest takeaway is that the private sector is willing to support us, to work with us. They are willing to listen to us and hear us talk, and they're willing to adopt our plans if they find them useful to themselves. So I think this is what I hope will be the beginning of a thawing in the relationship with the private sector, which is of course extremely important and dear to me as a former member of that sector. So I say thank you for having me. Thank you to everybody here. It's great talking with you. And I hope that this wonderful education journey will stay the course, because sometimes it can be very discouraging. I also greet my co-facilitators. I learned a lot from them too, especially about IT. And of course, I didn't talk about IT in Lagos. I felt that was a bit too much to talk about. It would take too long. And I'm glad that it came up with MTN, because MTN has been a great support. And they actually gave our teachers they gave us free access on the devices that were donated. And they've given us, we are working with them for 100 schools, to wire, and I'm not very tech savvy in that regard, but to put in wireless connections in our schools. So I thank them very much. Mr. Shagaya, it's always a pleasure to listen to you. I think you and I served together on a particular committee that hasn't met in a while, but while we were talking, it was always great to hear from you, great to hear your good ideas, and nice that you are totally unapologetic about the fact that really and truly you can't do all these things free. You do have to make a living, and therefore you have to accept that there must be some form of payment. I thank you all once again. I thank Ms. Ramikora, my dear big sister and senior in school. She and I go a long way. We went to the same schools, primary, secondary, university. So, it's a long association of the totally, and of course, I always admire her as a great professional and a great human being. I thank all of you, Mrs. Chinedu Made Adamilola. Thank you for having me. She's also my dear sister and one of the few people who call me by a particular name. So I thank you all, Mr. Smith, everybody on board. I thank you for having me. And I do hope, like I said, this is the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. Please have a good evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Definitely, we are embracing the 21st century, by making sure that we all collaborate, because together we are stronger than apart. So thank you very much once more for honoring our invitation. I'm sure that any other invitations that we extend towards you, I know that you will accept them gladly. So thank you very much for your time. Mr. Shagaya, over to you. A summary of a...
I will summarize what I said as, I think we're with like minds here, be willing to embrace new ways of doing things, even if it's not radically, at least incrementally. I think as one of the organizers said, the world is changing, and it's changing very fast, and we have to change with it. And fortunately, the way it's changing allows us new ways to invest and to leapfrog and to do things in just exciting new ways. So that is what I'll summarize with. I just want to thank the Honorable Commissioner for her kind words, and to also just congratulate you and encourage you to continue to set the standard across the country in terms of just education investments and public sector investments. Please continue to push on. A lot of states look to you in what you're doing. I don't get a lot of opportunities to do this also, but You know, for a company that is so large, MTN, they've been great partners to uLesson. We're still, you know, very, very small, but they've treated us like a partner. They cared very deeply about this space. And I'm happy to see that they're engaging with you as much as they're engaging with us. I think if we continue to collaborate like this is not one of those sort of platforms for collaboration that will yield nothing. I think very good things will come out of this over the next few years. So just thank you to the organizers, thank you to my co-panelists, and thank you to Lagos State and MTN, not only for engaging with this, but just for the work you are doing yourselves. It really is inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shagaya. Well, the one thing that I say, I'm a totally 21st century educator, and the one thing that we all have to embrace is change. And change is painful and needs to be paid for. So thank you very much. I'm sure that good things are going to come out of all of these collaborations and all of these conversations that we have, which is exactly why we are having the speaker series. You know, we want the town to meet the gown. So thank you very much once more. And then over to Odunwayo from MTN to talk, you know, just give us a summary of what MTN is doing, but I can see that you are doing quite a bit already, you know, quite a bit, you know, with Lagos State and also with uLessons, and I'm sure in very many more places. So over to you, Odunwayo.
Thank you very much. As we round up, I'd like to say thank you to the organizers of this session. Thank you, Aisen, for blazing the trail. Thank you to the Honorable Commissioner. I've listened to her severally, even on some panels I've moderated in the past. Thank you for doing a fantastic job. Thank you, Mr. Shagaya, for, you know, blazing the trail, I must say, for making, you know, the impossible possible. You know, I think you're doing a good job. And I think the thing, what I'd like to leave with all of us is that no one person can do it alone. We all have roles to play as in bridging this gap. Lagos State is one state out of many. There's so many Nigerian children, you know, out of school. And I think the challenge for us, and it's something we continue to ruminate and, you know, just iterate about, is how do we take learning to them? How do we make the dreams of these children, you know, these young ones, possible? How do we not jeopardize their future? And I think a lot can be done through collaboration, where everybody brings something to the table. I think that's important going, you know, forward. And I think, and I know a lot of schools are doing it, but I'd like to encourage Aisen, even as a body, to begin, you know, to get certain things done, to intervene in certain areas. Of course, I also know you can't do it alone, but I think it would be good to see that there's this burden of responsibility that Aisen takes and puts on itself to say, you know, we also can do this. But the most important thing is that the conversation continues, and I believe that is not just going to end as a conversation, but we would see, you know, the impact of, you know, EdTech, of techcos like MTN, and of course, of what the government is doing in education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Odunwayo, and thank you, MTN, for the great work that is being done. At the end of this discussion, we can all see that we have a lot in common. We can get a lot done. And so we will continue with this series. And as we said, we don't want to just talk ideas, but we want to also talk implementation. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you for your time. I will now hand over to Mr. Smith, the EXCO chairman, who's going to, I'll leave him to say what he needs to say. So thank you very much. And I apologize for, you know, for my networks and connections and devices and whatever. But like I always say, technology can fail sometimes. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lamin Kanra, and thank you for all the working with the technology, which, as you say, is always a challenge and is maybe one of the areas that we've been able to look at, address, and accept this evening. My role here is really just to thank all of our speakers for joining us this evening. It's really been an insightful evening. I'd like to say thank you to the Honourable Adefisayo for always responding when Aisen calls. In fact, I would at this point just like to thank her for her continued involvement with Aisen. She was a key member in the early days of Aisen in her previous role with Corona Schools, and she continues to support Aisen at every turn, and we are really grateful for that. I really enjoyed your ideas and discussions and what you've shared with us. I think it was very important the way that you emphasized the focus on teaching and learning as really one of the keys to bridging the gap in education across the country within Lagos State. And I'm very, very pleased that we've been able to hear about that and you were able to share that with you. And I'm very, very excited about the opportunities that the comprehensive schools will offer. I think that's a marvelous idea. It's a great pilot. I know that all Aisen schools would be keen to be involved when it's something that you feel that is ready to be shared. We'd be very, very happy to be involved with that. It's something that Aisen as an organization, all of our member schools, not only would like to provide a great service to their own children, but we all partner with schools local to us in our communities. So we could love to hear more about that, work with you both within Lagos State and across the country. And of course, you know, I'm based here at IITA, and IITA would continue to love working with you on the areas of improving the education for agriculture across the country. So thank you very much for being with us this evening. I would also like to thank Mrs. Sanya, the Executive Secretary of the MTN Foundation, and Mr. Shigaya, the CEO and founder of ULesson, for responding to our invitation to come and speak with us. I know that these people have very, very busy schedules, and it's great to be able to welcome with them here. And it's great to hear that they are keen to partner with Aisen and partner with each other, and we can work really to reach out in all of these areas across the country. Aisen as a national organization would love to work with both ULesson and the MTN Foundation to see how we can support schools across the country. I think everyone that knows me knows my passion for technology in education. Sometimes I maybe talk a little bit about it too much, but I think we've seen this evening that it's a key area that will allow us to reach out to a much wider community of children and to make sure education is available to all. So thank you so much for being with us this evening. Thank you for taking your time out and coming to join with us. I would like to thank everyone who has joined us here this evening. The people who have joined us together on the Zoom. The event was also streamed live on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for taking that time. If you're watching the recording, which will be available on YouTube, thank you for watching the recording. It really is something that allows us to work together to really build up education in the country, which is really one of the key aims of Aisen. We are not an organization that looks into ourselves. It is an organization that is really focused on ensuring that education is improved across the country and gives opportunity to all. So thank you for participating. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening to our speakers and their ideas. And we hope that we'll all be able to work together to the future. I would also like to thank the members of the press. I know that this has reached out beyond our direct community, and it's great for you to join us and be able to share that news. I hope you can share some of the key takeaways from this event across media outlets across the country. I would like to thank Aisen members. Aisen is only as good as its members. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us, all the schools, all the principals, all the school owners who work very closely with us to make sure everything is successful. And finally, I would like to thank our indefatigable leaders, our president, Ms. Chinedum Oluwadamalola, who gives endless time to Aisen to make sure that these events are successful, continue to be work, and we continue to improve education across the country. And of course, our Aisen Influence Group and Ms. Lamin Kanra, our former executive chair, who's now taking a lead in supporting that influence group to make sure that Aisen's influence reaches across the country and can have a real impact on education across Nigeria. It has been a real pleasure to be here this evening. I can only thank every one of you for being with us, and I look forward to having an opportunity in future to be able to meet with everybody again, and also to continue this conversation and to continue the positive ideas that we've had, so that we can move education forward for every child in Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining this evening, and we look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes.